As the year 2023 is coming to a close, let's take a quick look at what Rocket Lab has been up to since reporting their Q3 results. My name is Scott. Welcome to the channel. Let's talk Rocket Lab. To start things off, let's talk about the upcoming Reus missions. On November 12th, during an interview with NASA Spaceflight, Peter Beck mentioned that the next Reus mission plans to have all 9 of the Rutherford engines on the booster to have been previously flown. During an interview a little later in the month, on Markets with Madison, he mentioned that these 9 engines, the ones that are set to be reused, are currently in the factory undergoing recertification. Given that this interview took place a couple months ago, it's probably safe to say that the recertification process has been completed. Circling back to the NASA spaceflight interview, Peter also mentioned that the reused mission after the next reused mission, so the one that's coming after the 9 reused Rutherfords, is going to be the full booster. Now, if we look at 2024's launch schedule, it's safe to assume that these reused missions will land sometime in the first half of the year on one of the recovery missions. The reason it's safe to assume that the reused missions are also going to be recovery missions is the Rocket Lab team is going to want to extract the Electron and test how durable it was during these reflights. Also announced in November is that Rocket Lab plans to release a 113,000 square foot production facility formerly known as Lockheed Martin's Vertical Launch Building. Under the Rocket Lab umbrella, this facility will now be known as the Space Structures Complex. The purpose of this complex is to produce composite rocket and satellite structures. More specifically, the new complex will support develop and manufacture of carbon composite spacecraft buses, structural panel and assemblies, satellite dispensers, aerostructures and heat shields, composite overwrap pressure vessels, solar panel substrates, launch vehicle structures, and more. The complex is also planned to play a role in the development and long-term supply of carbon composite structures for the Neutron launch vehicle. Next up, let's get into a little bit of speculation. There were 2 quotes, each from a different interview, in which Peter Beck mentioned something that alludes to a constellation or to infrastructure. The first is from the Duncan Garner podcast, which Peter Beck was on November 19th. Peter said, "We have a whole constellation for a telecommunications company that will ultimately provide services to devices down here on Earth." We know that Rocket Lab does not have a constellation. I don't know if maybe he means that there's one planned, or maybe they even just mean that they are doing the operations for it, the tracking, the monitoring, etc. for a different company. Not sure exactly what it means by that. Maybe I'm reading into it too much, but we'll probably know more sometime in 2024. The second quote that stuck out to me was during an interview with Forbes in November 2023, which Peter Beck said, "What is the really big opportunity in space? Is it internet from space? Is it direct to mobile from space? The one thing we're making sure of is that we're in a position to compete when it becomes really obvious." Whether it's a constellation or infrastructure, whatever kind of word you want to attach to that, Rocket Lab is working on something big, and I think it's probable that we're going to get the unveiling of this hopefully in 2024. Now let's get into some wishful thinking. There are 2 pieces of information that I'm hoping to hear yet this year. The first is the news on Archimedes engine hot fire testing, and the second is the final launch number 11 for 2023. To start with the Archimedes engine testing, I'm really hoping that they do something similar to what they did with the cryogenic tank testing, where it wasn't this big, hey, we're about to do this thing, everyone get excited and tune in, none of that. It was like, hey, we did it, it's done, here's the video. I'm really hoping that happens with the Archimedes engine. Now, at the risk of sounding entitled, I'm going to be disappointed if that's not the case. And not because it doesn't happen, but because it hasn't been communicated. It was in October or November, I think, one of the interviews with Colin Canfield, where he was still mentioning Frosty tanks, hot fire. We saw the Frosty tanks, we're still waiting on the hot fire, and there's been no news since. Now, if there has been a delay, that's completely understandable, if not expected, but the clarification would be much appreciated. So I still have my fingers crossed. I'm hoping that within the next week or so, maybe as a post-Christmas thing, we get that same treatment that we got with the cryogenic testing. It was like, hey, it's done, here it is, boom. If not, just some news would be cool too. Either way, an update over the next few days would be much appreciated. Finally, for that last launch of the year, I know that it's like the whole Christmas break and everything, but one thing that I did take away from this most recent launch number 42, was this clip here.
Now, this mission is our 10th launch for the year so far, making 2023 our busiest launch year to date.
I'm still holding my breath. I've still got my fingers crossed. Hopefully by the time this video posts, hopefully we've already got the news. Hopefully there's been an announcement. Hopefully this is already redundant. But time will tell. Got a few days left here. It will be exciting to see if we got one final launch squeezed in or if that's going to be pushed into next year. Either way, let me know what you guys think. Are we going to get this final launch in 2023? Are we going to see the Archimedes test fire? What are you hoping for 2024? If you got value from this video, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.